Hi, I'm Zach from Garmin and welcome to our virtual AirVenture Oshkosh experience. I'm standing here today in front of a 1998 Cessna 182S model. Let's take a look at some of the latest products available from Garmin for general aviation aircraft. So let's take a look at some of the latest avionics updates that have been made to this aircraft. Serving as our primary ADI, we have the GI-275, which also can serve a number of different purposes in the aircraft. You see right below the ADI, we have it serving as a primary HSI, and then to the right we have a CDI. Accompanying that, we also have a GNS 430W, which is serving as our #1 GPS nav comm. And below that, we have the GPS 175, which is our newest low-cost series of GPS navigators. The GTX 345 is our ADS-B in and out transponder, which is going to provide worldwide ADS-B compliance, as well as free FISB weather and traffic data within the United States. The GTX 345 is going to feed that data to the GPS 175, the GNS 430W, as well as the GI-275s that are installed in this aircraft. And lastly, we have the GSB-15. The GSB-15 is a 3 amp, 18 watt dual USB charger with halo lighting. It also serves dual purposes. It's also going to allow us to transfer data to and from the GI-275s. But it's important to note that the GI-275s are also equipped with Connect technology, which means we can actually wirelessly transfer data to and from the units. So let's take a closer look at the GI-275. The GI-275 is a really exciting instrument from Garmin. One of the reasons is because it's actually one of our largest AML STCs we've ever released, with over 1,200 aircraft on the AML. And those range from Class 1 aircraft all the way up through Class 4 aircraft. So it's designed to fit in a wide range of panels. So specific to the attitude indicator variant of the GI-275, it's a 3 1/8 inch touchscreen round display, which is unique in the aviation industry. Whenever you compare that to things like the G5, which have the square display, it fits really nicely in with the 6-pack, especially for people that are trying to preserve the look of their panels. So with the attitude indicator display, it actually has an integrated ADAHRS in it, meaning all the air data and solid state AHRS information is contained within the unit. It also contains a 60-minute backup battery. So in the event you had an electrical failure or anything of that nature, it would actually be able to run for at least 60 minutes and provide you that attitude information. Additionally, it also has a backup VFR GPS, which can be mounted on the dash. So if you ever had any issues with your primary navigation system not giving you that GPS navigation data, you would have a backup VFR GPS. This is also really attractive for any aircraft that don't necessarily fly IFR and just need a VFR GPS solution. It gives you that direct-to navigation capability without the expense of installing a more expensive IFR navigator. So looking a little bit more in depth at the attitude indicator variant, you'll notice that it has the tapes like you'd see on some of our primary flight displays with G1000 NXI or G500 TXI. So with that comes a few additional features. So on the airspeed tape you see on the left-hand side of the unit here, you can actually have pilot selectable V speeds. So you can notate your rotation speed, VY, VX for reference points on the attitude indicator. Moving over to the right-hand side of the display here, we have the altitude tape. So the altitude tape, you can actually use the dual concentric knob on the lower left corner of the unit to actually select altitude. So if you needed an altitude reference bug, or if you're integrating it with an autopilot like we have here with the CAP 140, you can actually do altitude pre-select. You'll also notice that we have a vertical speed indication right here, just below the altitude tape. So that is going to notate your actual vertical speed, and just beneath just below there on the very far right side, you'll get a magenta line that swings up or down, which gives you your trend on the vertical speed as well. A couple other features I'd like to point out about the GI-275. In this installation, we actually have a magnetometer installed, so we're getting heading data fed to us. If you didn't have the magnetometer installed, you would still get track information, but you do need that magnetometer to get that heading data into the AI. So another thing that's really attractive about this unit, compared to some of our other electronic flight instruments like the G5, is that you can actually install synthetic vision. And that's just done through a downloadable enablement that's downloaded from flygarmin.com. And it gives you a number of really robust features. One of those being the flight path marker. So with G1000 NXI and G500 TXI, you'll have that green flight path marker, which takes that air data and the velocity data that you're receiving from the unit, and it actually will determine where you're going to be in the future. So the way I like to use that in flight, especially whenever there's a crosswind landing situation, on SVT you'll see the runway coming at you, and if you actually park that green flight path marker on the runway threshold, you'll grease every crosswind landing. It's a great way to cheat in the aircraft and make yourself look like a real professional. One other thing that's really interesting about the GI-275, whenever you're replacing something like a KI-256, which might be driving a KFC autopilot, is that we actually have a mounting adapter, which you can see here on the HSI, just below the AI, that actually allows you, without modifying the panel, to put the GI-275 in for the KI-256. So this helps you preserve the panel and actually allows you to drive KFC autopilots, which require the KI-256 indicator. One other interesting thing about the GI-275 that's great for people that might be sharing an aircraft is the crew profiles option. So me and my co-pilot actually share this aircraft, and when you hold the dual concentric knob and you go over to System, and then scroll over to Crew Profiles right here, we can select that. We see that Pat is highlighted in green, so he flew this aircraft last. I'm about to go flying, so I'm going to just go ahead and select my crew profile, activate that, and then all of my settings automatically change so that it is configured for the way I like to fly. Now, when the GI-275 is used in an HSI spot on the panel, it actually has some pretty unique features when compared to a traditional HSI. So one of my favorite features is actually the HSI map, which you can get to by turning the dual concentric knob one click, the large knob, one click to the right. So the HSI map adds a whole new level of situational awareness compared to traditional HSIs. So we get not only map data, but we can also overlay traffic data, weather data, as well as flight plan information directly on the HSI. Scrolling one click back over to the left, you have your traditional HSI view. So I like to use this whenever I'm flying procedures because I get a little bit more information about the waypoints that are coming next, such as the distance and ETE. Now with the GI-275, it's important to note that it supports up to 2 GPS sources and 2 VHF nav sources. And of course, you can switch between those by pressing the CDI key on the bottom of the display. The other thing to note with the GI-275 in an HSI variant is that it can actually provide redundant attitude indication displays. So in this instance, we have the AI, which obviously has the ADA-HARS built in, but whenever you have an ADA-HARS variant of the HSI, you actually have that redundant display capability. So if your primary AI ever failed, it would automatically revert over to the HSI, and your HSI would then become your primary attitude or your standby attitude indicator. The other thing I really like about the GI-275 HSI is that it supports automatic switching when you're on a localizer or ILS instrument approach. So whenever you're on green, you may be shooting the initial approach up on magenta needles on GPS. It will actually support automatic switching as long as all the parameters are met. And if you, for some reason, forget to switch or it doesn't automatically switch, you'll get an alert that reminds you that you need to be on green needles for that final approach segment. One of my favorite applications of the GI-275 in the cockpit is replacing a traditional mechanical CDI. So when you replace a mechanical CDI with the GI-275 CDI variant, replacing. So as you can see here in the bottom right, we have our traditional CDI. We've got our OBS indication here. We're currently on green needles, looking for that localizer signal. But one thing we can do is actually use this dual concentric knob to switch pages. And as you can see, we can actually change this over to an HSI if we wanted a secondary HSI. HSI map like we have on our HSI, or our primary HSI. MFD data if you want to get information about what might be displayed on your MFD, such as your desired track, your distance to the active waypoint, outside air temperature, distance to destination. You can also have a dedicated traffic display, and this is actually being fed by TSB data from ADSB on our GTX 345. We also have FSB weather data. So again, this is being fed at no charge from ADSB data uplink from ground stations in the US. Then we also have dedicated terrain page. This is great for anybody that might do some low-level flying or flies in mountainous areas. You can quickly switch over to the terrain page to see what terrain or obstacles might be in your area that you need to pay attention to. And then lastly, one of my favorite pages is the map page. So this essentially provides you with a secondary MFD display, which has a ton of functionality. Specifically, we're sitting here at New Century Airport, and one of my favorite databases is Safe Taxi. I do a lot of flying into airports that are sometimes unfamiliar to me, and so whenever I land, Safe Taxi automatically pops up and gives us this digital representation of a terminal airport chart. Another great thing about the CDI variant, whenever you're using this map page, is that you can also display secondary databases like obstacles and wires. So with the wire-aware database, you can actually display hazardous obstacle transmission lines, or hot lines as we like to call them, huge power lines that you'll see on those big metal towers. And those will actually be displayed directly on the map page of the GI-275. Additionally, we can get airport information. So say we land at one of those unfamiliar airports, we can actually tap on that on the GI-275 and select general information about the airport. So we get the identifier, the facility name, all sorts of information about the airport, as well as its elevation. If it's an unfamiliar airport, we might want to know information about the runways. It tells us whether the traffic pattern is left or right for each runway, as well as the runway dimensions. And then another great feature, especially whenever it's coupled with a GPS navcom or your comm is right nearby, is the frequencies display. So if you're looking for the ASOS frequency for New Century, you can see it displayed here, and then we can quickly move over here and actually change our comm to 135.325. Another thing I like about the GI-275 specific to the traffic display is some of the Garmin specific traffic calculations that we do. So we have a few proprietary technologies called target trend and terminal traffic, which actually provide another level of situational awareness compared to competitive ADSB solutions on the market. So specifically with terminal traffic, when an aircraft is ADSB equipped, we're actually smart enough to understand whether that aircraft is in the air or on the ground, and we can color code that aircraft differently. So we're sitting on the ground here at New Century Airport, and one thing we can do with terminal traffic is actually display whether an aircraft is in the air or on the ground. And as you can see here, we have a traffic target that's color-coded brown, indicating that it is actually on the ground. And whenever that aircraft takes off, it would turn to white, indicating that it is an airborne traffic target. Another feature I like on the GI-275 on the MFD display is the FSB weather display. And this can be displayed on the HSI map, or on the MFD page, the map page, or on a standalone FSB weather display like you see here. So with the data uplink we get from ADS-B through the FISB weather service, we can display a number of different pieces of weather information, including METARs, TAFs, NEXRAD, and we can even get information like lightning data. One of my favorite features about the GI-275 is its ability to wirelessly connect to a phone or tablet to actually transfer information about your flight, as well as databases, flight plan information, to and from that device. So I'm here today with my phone, and I've actually planned to fly out to Colorado. And so what I can do after I flip on the Avionics Master is I can wirelessly transfer that flight plan into the GI-275, which will then move over into our certified GPS, in this case the GNS 430 and GPS 175. So with last night when I was planning this flight, I was able to download all of my databases into Garmin Pilot, and then it will actually prompt me if there's any database updates available for the 275 to transfer those databases into the system. The GI-275 is also smart enough to actually transfer those databases to other GI-275s in the system using database sync, as well as transfer those databases to the GPS 175. In flight, the GI-275 can help us as well by providing certified GPS and AHRS information to a phone or tablet. And then post-flight, we can also utilize information that is wirelessly transferred into Garmin Pilot, such as the GPS, AHRS information, all of your position data, your route, and it will actually download that into the application and back it up on Fly Garmin. And this is great for anybody that might want to review data about their flight. If you have an engine indication system that is hooked up to our Connect ecosystem, either through a TXI display or GI-275 like we have in this aircraft, it will actually pump all of that engine indication system information into the application and over to Fly Garmin so that you can kind of monitor all of your cylinder head temperatures or the overall performance of your engine over time. That helps kind of with the preventative maintenance aspects of making sure that everything seems to be running smoothly and that you don't have any surprises whenever you're operating. And lastly, if you don't want to utilize the wireless database transfer capabilities of Garmin Pilot, you can actually install what we have as a GSB-15 here in the lower right corner. The GSB-15 is a 3 amp, 18 watt dual USB charger with halo lighting around each of the USB ports, so it's easy to see at nighttime. The GSB also serves a function as transferring data into the GI-275 system. So if there were any software updates or you didn't want to utilize Database Concierge to transfer databases, you could plug in a USB stick with those databases on them and transfer them into the system. The GI-275 would then use Database Sync to transfer them over to the GPS 175, as well as any other GI-275s in the system. Serving as our number 2 GPS navigator in this panel is the GPS 175. The GPS 175 is one of a family of 3 of our low-cost entry-level navigator series, which fits in a 2-inch form factor. The GPS 175 is GPS only, which provides us with LPV precision approach capability as well as visual approach capability. It joins the GNC 355, which is a GPS comm, and the GNX 375, which is a GPS transponder. The GPS 175 was intended for Class 1 and 2 aircraft and actually sports a 4.8-inch touchscreen display in a 2-inch form factor, which makes it a great option for people that are trying to replace legacy avionics in the panel. In this Cessna 182S, we actually replaced an old King radio here and didn't have to modify the height of the panel or anything like that. It just fit into the same space as the old King radio. So makes it a great low-cost option for installation in legacy-equipped aircraft. The GPS 175 sports a familiar user interface if you're familiar with our GTN series of GPS navigators. You still have the same UI and dedicated direct-to functionality, but on the GPS 175, GNC 355, and GNX 375, we actually have the ability to move between pages by using the dual concentric knob in the lower right corner of the unit. And these pages, aside from slot number 1, can actually be modified to how you like to fly. So if you fly in a busy airspace and you want to have a dedicated traffic display, you can actually modify that by going into System and Page Shortcuts. And so we could modify that to show traffic display. The way I like to fly is I like to have the nearest airport in slot number 3. So whenever I'm flying along, if I had any sort of issues and needed to land quickly, I could just quickly turn all the way to the right and show my list of nearest airports. And of course, we're sitting on the ground here at New Century Airport. So this is showing up as our nearest airport, but the nearest airport page gives you a ton of information about the airports that are around you, including safe taxi diagram. So if you need to understand the layout of the airport, you can also take a look at the runways so you can get the lengths, the widths, the traffic patterns, as well as your frequencies. So if you're approaching an airport and you needed to quickly understand what the tower frequency was, that's available under the frequency page. And with a single press of the home button, we get back to that familiar home page. One thing I'd like to point out that we actually retained from some of our legacy navigators like the GNS 430 is the direct to navigation function. So this COM, and people got really familiar with that direct to functionality, dialing in an airport and then hitting enter twice to start navigating just about anywhere you wanted to go. We retain that same functionality here on the GPS 175, and we can actually hit select a waypoint, and you can either type it in with the touchscreen display and swipe between different pages on the keyboard, or you can use that dual concentric knob, which a lot of people like to do if you're in heavy turbulence, or some people just prefer the tactile feel of the dual concentric knob itself. Diving in a little bit deeper into the GPS 175 unit itself, we can see here we have a dedicated map display. And this is actually a robust, dynamic, moving map. You can zoom in and out with the small knob here on the right side of the display. And one of my favorite features is you can actually tap on the display itself and get information about points on the map itself. So if we wanted to, say, get more information about this airspace here, we could select that airspace and understand, oh, it looks like that's controlled by Johnson County Executive Tower. We get the max altitude as well as the minimum altitude. We can see that it's a Class Delta airport. We can actually preview that to see where the Class Delta extends to, as well as get frequencies that are associated with that. So that's really useful if you're flying in an unfamiliar area and you may need to get in contact with the nearest center. You can actually look up what center frequencies control that specific area. And with a single tap, we get back to the home page. Moving from the map page, we also have dedicated traffic and weather pages, which are actually being fed by our GTX 345 ADS-B in and out transponder, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Accompanying those, we have a dedicated terrain display. So if you're flying in a mountainous region, or if you do a lot of low-level flying and you want a dedicated terrain display, this is a great option. And will also show, as you can see here on the display, any obstacles or wire-aware database obstacles that are around you. And then there's the nearest airport page that we talked about earlier. One of my favorite features is the flight planning page. So serving as our #1 GPS navcom, we obviously have the GNS 430W, which is a great unit, but could take some time if you were doing any flight plans that required you to get on a Victor airway. So with the GPS 175, we can go into the flight plan page. It knows we're on the ground at New Century, so it's added that automatically as our departure airport. So we are going to jump over today to the Emporia VOR. So we select Emporia VOR, and then we can tap on that VOR in the flight planning page, and we have a load airway option. When we select load airway, it actually shows us all the Victor airways that intersect through that VOR. And today I want to go on the Victor 12, and we're going to go down to Wichita today. So we'll look for ICT. There's Wichita. And the cool thing is you can actually preview and make sure, okay, yes, that's exactly where I want to go. It's going through all the correct intersections, and it lists the intersections on the left-hand side of the display here. And then it gives us the option to go ahead and load that into our flight plan. So just like that, we've built a robust flight plan with a lot of different waypoints in there very quickly. Whereas on legacy units, you would have to go in and manually enter each one of those waypoints. So as our final waypoint, we're just going to add in KICT. And the thing I'll point out is that it also has a feature called Fast Find on the GPS 175. And Fast Find is actually smart enough to look at the route that you're planning in the flight planning page. And instead of selecting whenever I typed in KI, for instance, it's smart enough to look along your route as well as the region you're operating in, and it will suggest things that are close to you. Instead of saying, hey, there's this airport in Central America that also starts with the same letters that you may be inputting. So in this instance, it searched along our route. It thinks that we are going to KICT, which is Wichita, and we are, so I'll go ahead and select that. And just like that, we've got our flight plan. We can go back into our map page, and of course, we can pinch and swipe. And so all that looks good. We're going to the Emporia VOR, no issues there, and we are just about ready to go. But say we were sitting on the ground here and they had a slight amendment for us and they wanted us to take a jog around a certain airspace. So let's just go in here on the map. You can actually hit graphically edit and we can click and drag this line over. So say we were going to go to just try and navigate around a weather cell or something like that, and this 39er kilo aircraft would put us on a good heading to do that. We can hit done, go back, and then we've graphically edited airport in there, and we're going direct to there from New Century Airport. Serving as the ADS-B solution of this aircraft is the GTX 345. The GTX 345 is an ADS-B in and out transponder boasting 1090 Mode S capability, which makes us ADS-B compliant anywhere in the world. The GTX 345 offers a number of features either as a standalone unit or as a bigger part of an integrated system. The GTX 345 boasts Bluetooth connectivity, which can send traffic and weather information received from the ground stations to a portable device. It can also display those on avionics such as the GPS 175, the GNS 430, or the GI 275s in this aircraft. The GTX 345 offers a few features that help make flying a little bit easier, including a count up timer, countdown timer, flight timer, and trip timer. For more information on the products available in this video, please contact your local Garmin dealer or visit Garmin.com.